You know, for the longest time, we really only had one way of looking at autism. It was all seen through this single medical lens. But recently, a really powerful new idea has popped up, and it sparked this huge debate. A debate about what it even means to be autistic. And honestly, it gets to the very core of who we are.
And it all boils down to this one really powerful question. Is autism something that needs to be fixed, something to be cured, or is it just a different way of being human? This question changes everything, and it perfectly sets up the two clashing worldviews we're about to dive into.
Okay, so first up, let's look at the way things were. This is the traditional medical view, the one that has shaped, well, pretty much everything for decades. It's often called the pathology paradigm.
And the language here, it really tells a story, doesn't it? The official definitions use words like deficits, restricted, and harmful dysfunction. In this view, autism is seen as an impairment, right? A problem that needs to be solved so a person can live a normal life. This idea is the foundation for everything that follows, and it's key to understanding the conflict that was about to erupt.
But then, starting back in the early 90s, a totally different idea started to gain ground. And this idea didn't come from doctors or researchers, it came from autistic people themselves. This was the beginning of the autistic rights movement and the whole concept of neurodiversity. And you can see from this timeline, this wasn't just some random thought bubble. It was a real, organized movement. It kicks off in '92 with the founding of the Autism Network International. Then, a year later, Jim Sinclair's essay, Don't Mourn for Us, becomes this huge touchstone. By '98, the word neurodiversity is officially in our vocabulary, and by 2005, you've got an Autistic Pride Day. This was a movement finding its voice, for sure. And wow, this quote from Jim Sinclair, it just gets right to the heart of it all. It completely reframes the whole idea of a cure. It's not about healing. From this perspective, it's about erasure. The argument is that autism isn't just something a person has, like a cold. It's a fundamental part of who they are.
So, that brings us here to the neurodiversity paradigm. Now, think back to that medical definition we just saw. The language here is completely different. We go from deficits to variation, from dysfunction to difference. The whole idea is that, just like we have biodiversity in nature, we have neurodiversity in the human brain. And that variety isn't a mistake. It's actually a valuable part of the human experience.
So you can see where this is going, right? These two ways of thinking are on a total collision course. One side sees a disorder that needs a cure, and the other sees a form of diversity that needs acceptance. And believe me, this is way more than just an argument over words. It has massive, real-world implications for everything from therapy to personal identity.
This chart really lays out the divide perfectly. The medical model's goal? Cure it, prevent it, get rid of traits seen as undesirable. But the neurodiversity model? The goal is to accept and accommodate, to focus on improving quality of life. And even the language is a battleground. The medical model often prefers person with autism, to separate the person from the condition. But the neurodiversity movement usually prefers autistic person, arguing that you can't separate the two. It's a core part of their identity.
Now, this conflict isn't just theoretical. It plays out in really intense ways in the real world, especially when it comes to therapy. To get a handle on this, we're going to zoom in on one of the most common and, frankly, one of the most controversial interventions out there, ABA therapy. So what is ABA? Well, in a nutshell, applied behavior analysis is a therapy that uses learning principles to try and create positive changes in behavior. Basically, it encourages certain skills and discourages others, usually with some kind of reinforcement system.
And the controversy here, it is huge. On one hand, supporters say ABA can be incredibly helpful. It can teach crucial skills for independence and help reduce behaviors that are genuinely harmful, like self-injury. And they'll point out that modern ABA is all about positive reinforcement, not punishment. But on the other hand, a lot of critics, especially autistic self-advocates, argue that ABA is really just designed to make autistic people act normal. They say it can punish harmless and even helpful behaviors, like stimming. And it encourages something called masking, which is exhausting and can lead to burnout and even trauma. It's really important to say that experiences with ABA can be wildly different, and a lot of it seems to depend on the specific therapist and the methods they use.
And from the clinical side of things, you hear this perspective a lot. As this quote says, the goal isn't to cure autism or erase it, but to build practical skills that help a person be as independent as possible. It just shows you how deep the divide is and how people see the entire purpose of therapy. All of this intense debate has kind of forced everyone, doctors, parents, autistic people, to move beyond this simple cure versus acceptance fight. It's pushed us to start asking a much deeper and maybe a much more important question.
And that new question is all about this idea of thriving. The quote here absolutely nails the core of the neurodiversity argument. It's about challenging that old, baked-in assumption that being autistic means you can't live a full, thriving life. The focus has started to shift from fixing autism to creating a world where autistic people can actually thrive.
So, we end up back where we started, with a question. But this one's bigger. It's not just about autism. It's about all of us. What if the goal isn't to squeeze people into a narrow box of what we call normal? What if, instead, the goal was to build a world, our schools, our workplaces, our communities, that's flexible enough for every single kind of mind to flourish? What would that world even look like?